Yo. Can you hear me? I can't hear you if you're talking. So.
Uh,
There we go.
I
I
I
can hear you
wasn't
now.
talking, so it's pretty impossible to hear me.
Brilliant. Understandable. Welcome, welcome. So, how's it been going? It's been a while since we've had a session, I think.
Yeah, about 2 weeks ago Friday,
Mm-hmm.
I think. Yeah, it's been going pretty well. Um, had Clash yesterday, day
Cool.
before.
How'd you do?
We in on Saturday we went to the final but lost, and on Sunday we won the whole.
Nice. That's pretty good. How did you personally do in the games? Were you pleased with your performance?
Um, I Not entirely. It is it's somewhat excusable because I was playing jungle instead of top lane.
Sure.
So I was doing fine for jungle,
Hmm.
but to say that I was doing fantastic is
Yeah, yeah. I know what you mean.
not great.
Okay. So, uh, I have down that the last couple of things that we talked about were like um the it seems like the very first session we kind of talked about mental APM, and then the last session we talked about like tethering and cooldown abuse. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
So, um what has your experience been like working on tethering and cooldown abuse these last couple of weeks? Do you feel like it's gotten any better?
Um,
Have you seen any benefits?
yeah. I've tried some ADC versus ADC matchups.
Mm.
You have to have set ranges
Mm-hmm.
that you can play around. Um, I've I've tried to understand the ranges of champions and try to play around them a lot more than I did previously.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Cooldown abuse is a bit more difficult because it's very champion specific.
It is. It is indeed.
So that is still being worked on, but
Gotcha.
does require some more time. It's not necessarily that it's difficult
Yeah.
per se, but it's just like
Yeah,
it's
it's
gonna
like
take
it's
a
there
while.
in concept, but in practice, it's just kind of different for every matchup. So you got to kind of figure out the
Yeah,
matchups, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that kind of brings us, I think, to some of the stuff that we should talk about today, which are like trading patterns and wave manipulation stuff. How does that sound?
Sure.
Great. So, have you got a VOD to go over?
I do.
Excellent.
I do not know if it is the best for this particular situation, but we will see.
Indeed, we will.
I think there are some stuff in the laning phase that we can pick apart, probably.
Great. So we've got Kled into, let's see, Kled into Mundo. That's one hell
Guess
of a
who had
matchup.
counterpick?
Okay. All right, all right. I actually know nothing about top lane. Who has counterpick?
Um,
I assume it's
Kled, Kled,
you?
I had counterpick. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Kled demolishes Mundo for a living.
Yeah, I that was my intuition, but
The
one can never be too sure.
healing reduction on Q,
Yeah.
max health on W.
Oh, max health on W. Yeah.
Mundo can never run away,
Mm-hmm.
and if he ever gets low enough, Kled can just one shot him.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Sounds pretty reasonable. So, um, so here's kind of what I'll open up with, right? Um, how do you understand wave manipulation as like a concept? Like, what are you going to be trying to do with the wave here?
um, in this particular matchup,
Yeah, in this game,
I
I'll say.
um in this game I will attempt to in the very early levels, so pre-level 6 pretty much,
Mm-hmm.
I will try to freeze the lane
Okay.
and get it in front of my turret. The reason being is because I can run down window.
Okay, great.
If
Yeah.
I land my Q and I E through him, then I can run him down.
Right.
And the longer the lane is, the more chance I have to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
Makes so much
Precisely.
sense.
Yeah.
After level 6, I want to maybe get more pressure in the lane because Kled level 6 can go mid lane really quickly,
Mm.
obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So around level 6 and upwards, I want to create a bit more pressure in the lane.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if Mundo is plays poorly, I should have a couple of kills then as well. So playing up in the lane shouldn't be the biggest of deals. Um, so I want to try to establish a lead either in CS or just kills very early on,
Mm-hmm.
pre-level 6, and then around level 6, I want to look for either turret plates or roams with my ulti.
Okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense. So I want to point out a couple of things um, that were present there in your response that I think are really good. So first thing is that you kind of noticed that there's sort of a couple of different zones in the lane, right? And each of them gives you kind of different benefits, right? You can sort of keep it even,
Yeah,
you can kind of pull it back, or you can kind of push it out, right? And so that I think is a really good thing to kind of keep in mind when we're talking about wave manipulation. Another thing is that you talked about how the matchup kind of changes over time, right? So you talked about the big switch being like pre six and post six in this matchup, where pre six you have a lot of lane dominance, and so you want to capitalize on that by kind of playing towards like where you're like what gives you the most advantage in your 1v1 matchup, right? Then post six, you talked about okay, like now I have kind of the opportunity to influence the map, and so if I'm already ahead, maybe a way that I can spread my lead a little bit to other lanes is to go, push and roam, right? Like look for ultimates in the mid lane, right?
yeah,
So I think those are two really important ideas. The idea of, like what position is actually beneficial to you, and how does that position change over time, right?
yeah.
Another thing that I think I'd like to kind of mention is this idea of like how the jungler kind of plays into everything, right?
Mm.
So do you think about the jungler at all when you manage your wave?
Fairly little.
Okay.
I do notice it um, when the jungle is like nearby and
Yeah.
wants to gank.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But I don't. I I I do occasionally. So like
Mm-hmm.
sporadically, I change um, my behavior based upon where the jungler is. So
Sure, sure.
I can if if I see the enemy jungler on the opposite side of the map or I see my jungler on the opposite side of the map, that influences how far I'm willing to push up in my own lane.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
But that isn't per se wave manipulation. That's more like general positioning.
Okay.
I only change my wave when my jungler's really close or when the enemy jungler is really close.
Gotcha. So you kind of start changing the way that you'll interact with the wave if you have reason to believe that a jungler is going to be nearby soonish. That's kind of
Yeah,
the way that you do it. Okay. So I think the thing that I'll say about that is generally kind of by the time you see them, like it's too late, right? Like you've sort of already made your
yeah,
choice about where the wave is going to be, right?
yeah,
So that said, I think like the way that you're doing it right now is like totally. I don't mean to say like totally fine, but like that's like the first level, You know what I mean? Like the first thing that you have to learn is like what's the correct position. Okay, so let me actually. So if we think about like, I'm just gonna like skip forward to like where you're actually like in lane, and like talk a little bit about that. So yeah, so like just if we, I just want like a thing up here, right? So that we can like talk about this.
Okay, yeah, whatever.
It's I don't actually need the like you. I'm just gonna like use the map. You know what I mean? So
Okay.
The so what was I going to talk about? So when you're thinking about wave manipulation and you're thinking about junglers, right? Generally, you kind of have to like you can't change the position of the minion wave on a whim, right? Like it takes time to actually put yourself in a position that you want to be, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I'll kind of really like to do is I'll like in the loading screen, which we were just in, which I won't return to because I'm committed now, is you kind of like look at the jungle matchup and you start to kind of take like a guess, right? Like, do I think that they're going to path towards me or do I think that they're going to path away from me, right? Mm-hmm. And one of kind of the simplest rules. Oh, I remember now what I was going to talk about. Forget everything I just said. Scopes. So this is what I want to talk about. So when we talk about a skill like wave manipulation, right? There's actually like a ton of different scopes that are going to give you different answers on like where the wave should be, right? So one scope is like the PvP scope, right? And that's just like, if we were literally just like a straight up 1v1, right? What position of the wave allows me to like gain the most advantages in like laning and trading, right? And so you had kind of correctly identified that in this matchup, right? Like if you have it further back, right, then you can run Mundo down the lane, right? And so that's kind of one scope, right? Like this is like we're solving a problem. Like how do I lane the most effectively, right? Then like jungler is like a second scope, right? It's like, oh, okay, so like regardless of like the like optimal position like here, right? There's maybe like if I know that the enemy jungler is like sitting in Tribrush, right, like ready to gank me, right? That kind of makes like anything further forward than this feel kind of sketchy, right? Because at that point, like you can get ganked and die, right? And so that feels kind of bad. And so, conditionally, depending on the position of the enemy jungler, certain zones are kind of like locked off, right? Because if you enter those zones, then like you're open to a gank, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of another scope of wave management. And then third, you kind of identified being sort of like more of like a map scope, right? Where it's like, okay, ignoring the position of the enemy jungler and ignoring the position of like me versus my laner, like are there objectives up nearby and is my team going to start trying to contest those, and if so, like what are the timings that we're going to be going for those objectives, and like when do I want to be free to like have tempo to go somewhere else, right? And so you can think of that being kind of similar to like what you were talking about with like roaming to mid, right? Like it's like the kind of like whole map as a scope, and how that relates to like the like respawns on major objectives as well as your ultimate cooldown, which is why I put the arrow here, right?
Yeah.
So these are kind of our three different scopes, right? We can think about the map, we can think about the like jungle, and we can think about our lane, right? Yeah. And this is completely illegible, but these are kind of our three scopes. So, I think what I'd like to do here is just kind of like go through this game, and let's talk about like each of these different scopes at like various different points in time, and kind of talk about like because the difficulty and the challenge in wave manipulation is that very often these three scopes are going to give you completely different answers, right? Like, Your lane wants you to be pulled, right, so that you can fight Mundo and run him down the lane. But there's also like an objective up, so you kind of want to be pushing so that you can go to that. And like maybe the enemy jungler's around, so maybe you don't want to be doing that. And it's like, you know, figuring out like which scope is the most important and like how to kind of collapse that and like pay attention to it is I think what the skill is here, right?
Yeah.
As well as just being able to even figure out like what is the correct answer for each of these scopes, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I want to come back to. So, you know, it sounds like you're already kind of considering like the lane scope and the map scope. So the jungler scope I think is the one that I want to kind of focus on the most here, right? So when we look at this matchup, like Lee and Daka, right? What does that mean to you? Sort of an open-ended question, but I just kind of want to talk about that.
To me, it's Lee Sin has priority pre-level 6.
Okay.
So he just straight up wins a 1v1 if Kha'Zix ever decides to take one for some
Okay.
reason. Um, uh, if if Lee gets ahead, Kha'Zix can 1v1 him only after like level 11. But
Mm-hmm.
otherwise, if they're even around level 6, the matchup flips and Kha'Zix can actually 1v1 Lee Sin
Mm-hmm.
because of the if you evolve Q on Kha'Zix, you
Yeah.
demolish Lee Sin. But pre-level 6, it's very heavily in favor of Lee Sin, uh, just because of the pretty insane healing from stuff like Conquer and his Q
Yep.
or his W.
So that's definitely kind of talking about the 1v1 matchup. What's your intuition of their gank opportunities?
Kha'Zix isn't the best ganker in the world. He's not. He's like he has no hard CC ever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, his only gank opportunity is walking into the lane and hoping you flash away to E after you, um, or hoping that the laner has crowd control. Um, Lee Sin is less gated by CC because um, he has a slow and he has more reliable gap closers, as in
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's got two of them
his
instead of one.
yeah, he can get on top of someone and then reliably crowd control them, even if it's a slow,
Mm-hmm.
um, to secure kills substantially more easily than Kha'Zix can.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so when you think about Kha'Zix ganking you in this matchup, is that something that's scary or not that scary?
Not really. Um, I think if he ganks me, I have to be aware of his isolation damage, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But if he ganks me, I think um, due to the very nature of the kit of Kled, I might I should live at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, Post 6, I run away with ulti.
Sure.
Uh,
Yeah.
Pre 6, it, I should be able to live for long enough.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with the passive of Kled just being pretty hilarious
It's
sometimes.
pretty good. Yeah.
Uh, to even like if not live, then maybe even get a kill or two out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. I think it's like you're relatively safe because you can actually like if he comes from behind, you can actually like dash through him to escape, right?
Yeah,
And if he comes at an angle where Mundo can't immediately follow up, you actually like win the 1v1 in melee range early on, right?
yeah, pretty much.
So it's I agree with you. I think it's kind of tough to make that happen. What about league ganking for you? What does that look like?
Um, I'm on blue side, so
Yep.
like in an ideal world, um, I let's say I have the wave frozen in front of my turret. Adley comes through Tribrush. um, then it would be me engaging with E into Q, and upon Q, Mundo slowed for like 60% or something. That should allow Lee Sin to follow up with a Q engage. And even if he flashes, like Mundo has to flash my EQ or he dies. Pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Post level 6, it's more like, okay, can we burst him before his ult healing gets too ridiculous?
Yeah.
But even then, we can run him down with my ulti.
Mm-hmm.
And if Lee Sin gets level 6, he's doomed either way.
Okay.
Until Mundo gets like 2 or 3 items, but that's for way later in the game.
Sure. Yeah. So, I think we'll. So, one thing that I'm just going to let you know that I'm going to do is I may have, like, disagreements about, like, the things that you say here, like, the assumptions that you have about the matchups. But if I do, I'm not actually going to voice them this time. I'm just going to. What we're going to do is we're going to work within, like, the scope of, like, how you understand these matchups and say, like, if this was true, here's how you would, like, want to react, right? And the reason that I think this is good to do is because, like, the only way that you're gonna, like, me telling you that, like, something else is true doesn't actually help you that much, right? You actually have to learn that through experience of playing the game. And so, like, it's better to work with, like, the principles of, like, of kind of like the flowchart of, like, how you figure this out from what you know, right? And then as what you know grows, so too your conclusions can change, right? Because the model doesn't change, it's just the data that you're kind of inputting to it, right? So I'm just kind of, like, saying that up front. So if we assume that all of what you said is true, then it seems to me like, you know, like, pre-6, to kind of chunk that more succinctly, right?
Yeah.
Pre-6, Lee has, like, pretty reasonable ganks if you guys can, like, get Mundo to, like, come out a little bit, right? But otherwise it's maybe a little bit tough to like, burst him down. And Kaz ganking into you is, like, pretty much not an issue unless you're pretty far out, right?
Yeah.
If you're, like, past the halfway point of the lane, maybe it gets a little bit sketchy, kind of depending on your health values, but that's kind of it, right?
Yeah.
Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, that's pretty comprehensive.
Okay. So, the thing that I'll note then, and okay, here's actually kind of the final question that I think it's important to ask. In a 2v2, what do you think happens?
We kill Kha'Zix.
Yeah, I kind of agree.
If Mundo is smart, he runs away. If Mundo is not smart, he dies.
True.
Kinda.
Mm-hmm. So, what I think this essentially kind of boils down to is that from the scope of the jungle, like, generally, you're pretty strong, right? Like, you're a good side of the map to play for if your team decides to do it. What I'll caution you against, though, is, you know, we've sat here and we've kind of, like, done this analysis now, right? But do you know what trumps all of this analysis? Keeping your eyes open and actually seeing what your team does. It can be very, very, very tempting and very, very easy to kind of figure out what the right play should be and to then just kind of assume that your team is going to do that. When 9 times out of 10, especially when you're playing in bronze and silver, it's literally just not going to happen. Your Lee's going to be like, I like red. And he's going to start red for that reason. Right? You know, like, this is the kind of stuff that's going to happen, okay?
He's dual cute with our pike, so, you know, that it's probably going to be something.
Yeah, right? So, it's important to have an understanding of, like, kind of what happens from even, but it's also important to recognize that the game's going to spiral out from even real fast, right?
Yes.
And
Yes,
so
it will.
it's just like this is like an expectation that you can have coming into the game, right? Is that it's going to move away from even very, very fast, right? And so at a very simple level, right, a Kha'Zix that's super fed can kill you no matter where you're at. A
Yeah,
Lee that's
fair,
super fed can
fair.
kill Mundo no matter how many items he has, right?
Yes, yes.
So junglers always matter some, right? And
Yeah,
understanding how much they matter is actually part of a good and important part of kind of thinking in this scope. But the I think the biggest and easiest rule, the biggest, easiest, simplest rule to follow when we think about jungler scope, right, is like kind of like assume that the enemy jungler is nearby until you see that they are not,
yeah,
right? And the only exception that you can have to this rule is if your jungler is nearby and you win the 2v2, right? So to
yes.
kind of come back to like this like basic idea of like laning, right? It's like obviously this is like a minute and 54, so we don't even need to worry about junglers really being on the map because like a level 2 Kha'Zix just like isn't scary, right? But like once we kind of get up to this like level 3 area, right? It's like if this is what our map looks like, right? Totally freaking dark. And I don't know. We'll watch the actual VOD and like see what kind of goes on because maybe we actually do have information on where Kha'Zix is, but like I'm gonna assume that we don't, right? If we don't have information on where Kha'Zix is, do you know where he is? He's right here.
Fair.
That is where he is, okay? Right? And so we essentially kind of we play in such a way that if he is there, it's fine, right?
Yeah.
And so we think about like the jungler scope kind of first, right? And we say to ourselves like, okay, like I'm going to assume that the enemy jungler is nearby until proven otherwise. And so every action that I take is essentially going to assume that like the enemy jungler is nearby until I can prove otherwise, either by seeing him somewhere else on the map or by warding in such a way as to remove the doubt, right? And once you remove the doubt, right? Once you know that he's not nearby, then you can actually collapse backwards to the like laning scope of wave manipulation and say like I know that the enemy jungler isn't nearby. I don't need to worry about that. And now I can manipulate my wave in such a way as to like really just like pound in like my advantage in the matchup, right?
Yes.
So with that kind of a strategy in mind, let's take a look at sort of what happens here. So we have a level 1 in which Kha'Zix flashes, which is kind of good to know. So let's actually watch this. So Pike flashes. Lee is a wuss and doesn't take the Q. And no, it's actually totally fine for him to not take the Q. There's nothing he's going to get there. But
Maybe killed even.
yeah, could get killed. Isn't going to kill Kha'Zix. Probably
Oh, yeah, wait,
at minimum
I
loses
want,
some health, and it's like he doesn't
I
get
want
anything
to
extra.
show
Yeah,
something here.
sure.
But when I hover any item in the game,
Yeah.
like Dorn's blade, it shows whatever it shows.
Uh
But
huh.
when I hover every support item, it doesn't show that.
Huh.
So Pike's gonna back here for an item, and I'm looking because he had no items. And when I hover it, it shows nothing.
Now that's an interesting one.
Is that just me or? Like,
I don't know. I've never seen that before.
Bit
Yeah.
of a sidetrack, just
No idea.
kind of frustrates me.
Anyway,
tiny bit.
so Kha'Zix is flashed. What does this mean for your wave management?
Uh, I highly like it. It allows me to be a tiny bit more upfront because if he ganks me and I turn around to kill him, he can't flash away. Um, but for the rest, it isn't the biggest of deals.
Yeah, it's actually kind of a trick question. I don't actually think it matters that much.
It,
Sort of
it,
like
it,
you
it,
said.
it matters. It matters like very little. It's not like
Yeah.
Sejuani flash or Trundle flash. Like
No, nothing like that.
to get people on top of you to kill you.
Yeah.
Like Kha'Zix can get on top of you, but he probably won't kill you pre-6.
Yep.
Yeah. Ish.
Okay, so here we come into the lane. So, the thing that the jungler scope is going to say is, like, essentially, don't really care until, like, level 3, generally, right?
Yeah.
Kha'Zix is physically capable of coming top at level 2. It's not like forbidden by the game's coding, right? But it is kind of forbidden by the game's strategy, right? There isn't a whole lot that he can get done, and basically it's not that we're actually saying like Kha'Zix can't come top level 2, it's that we're saying we don't care if Kha'Zix comes top level 2. We will literally just walk away, right? So keep that in mind, right? We're still actually playing around the jungler scope first, but the jungler scope basically just says agnostic, don't care, right?
Yes.
So from now, we actually do kind of get to go for the more like lane oriented approach, right? So the first thing that you kind of talked about when you're talking about like the lane oriented approach is that you kind of want to pull the wave back so that you can try to like run Mundo down the lane and sort of fight him, right?
Yeah.
Is that the case?
Yes.
Is that true from level 1?
It is true from it is true from level 2.
Okay.
Level 1 I can Q him and it pulls him back, but he can run away because he can Q me and slow me forever. Once I hit level 2 and I level my E,
that's kind of what gives you the mobility to actually stick on him.
Yeah,
Agreed.
exactly.
So our goal here is to engineer a situation where the wave is as far back as possible when you hit level 2, right?
Yes.
And we don't really care what happens level 1 because there isn't a whole lot to do there in terms of combat. It's just sort of like, how do we play for the level 2?
Yeah.
So Mundo comes into lane and let's see kind of what you do. So he whacks the minion, you whack a minion back. So what are you trying to do here?
I'm trying to match his pressure in a way. So he
He whacks minions. I try to whack minions at about the same pace he does.
Okay.
Slightly slower because I deal more damage to minions. But I try to. I don't want to lose if he constantly whacks the minions. Yeah, I'm just gonna use that term. If he
Yeah.
he could hard push this wave, but the second wave would catch it, but he could also hard shove that one, and then I'm under turret farming minions, and he can and then the wave's back to normal. So I'm trying to minimize I want him to kill minions faster than I do. But I also do not want to lose all my minions while only getting 2 free CS.
Yes. So this kind of brings us actually to a correction to a simpler earlier model that I talked about, right? So we talked about kind of 3 zones of the lane, right? Pushed, pulled, and even, right?
Yeah.
So now we're actually realizing there's actually more like 5 zones, right? There's push, pulled, even, and under my turret and under their turret, right?
Yeah.
So basically what we've kind of said is if we think about it in that terms, right? Zone 5 for us is actually kind of bad, right? And it's underneath the my camera for the stream, but I've got a 5 under here, right? Zone 5 actually feels kind of bad because he actually has pretty decent ranged poke. And, the fact that the turret hits the minions means that you're going to be kind of locked in animation a lot of the time, which kind of gives you him the opportunity to trading stance you a bunch. And that kind of sucks.
Yes.
So we really kind of don't like Zone 5. Zone 4 feels fantastic. We love Zone 4. Zone 4 is where we want to be. That's where that's what we kind of had envisioned when we talked about pulling the wave. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So then we have Zone 3, which is just like dead on even, right? Which feels okay, right? Zone 3 is not bad, but it's not as good as Zone 4, right?
Yeah.
Zone 3 and 4 kind of work sort of the same way. Zone 4 gives you a little more ability to all in, but not a huge amount, right?
Yeah.
Then we have zone 2, which starts to feel like, okay, now we're sort of like getting into the territory where like we can get ganked and it can be scary, right?
Yeah.
And then zone 1, we gain kind of that same benefit that we were talking about in the lane scope, where like now we can like Q him as he's going for minions under the turret, and it's like pretty easy to land that, right? So we get some like free harass with the Q. But that's not really a trading pattern that we're super happy about, right?
No.
We want to follow up on our Q with Eing in and autoing a bunch of times and like, you know, taking an extended trade. So zone 1 doesn't really match our trading pattern. Zone 2 feels kind of bad because we can get ganked. Zones 3 and 4 are kind of where we want to be. So this mentioned, right? So we want to manipulate the wave in such a way that he can't force us into zone 5 out of zone 4, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why we're autoing the minions back, right?
Yes.
So I'll mention again that there's a certain amount of like how do you actually get the wave to go where you want it to go, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of also part of wave manipulation. And for right now, I'm just gonna say let's observe whether what you do actually sort of does what you wanted it to. You know what I'm saying? So like you want to prevent it from going into zone 5, and you want to kind of bring it out of zone 3 and into zone 4, right? Like this is kind of the stated goal, right?
Yes.
And so if this is the goal, let's see how well you're able to actually execute that goal.
We're not going to talk about that yet.
We're not going to talk about that one either. So this brings up another point, right? Wave manipulation isn't just wave manipulation. It's wave manipulation that you're trying to do while also CSing. Holy crap. Now that's so much more complicated, right?
Yeah.
So another thing that I'll point out that's kind of important about... so he whacks this auto, you do this minion. I think this auto is actually really important, not from a wave manipulation perspective, but just from a CSing perspective, right? If we just say, okay, we immediately want to like pull him back into zone 4, right? The most obvious answer is just, okay, every time he whacks a minion, we're like, nice. We're like getting closer to our goal, right? And so we should just like leave it, right? But the reason that we can't do that is because the minion's here, right? And in order for us to get all 3 of these last hits without using Q, we actually have to auto here so that we desynchronize the minion deaths, right? And if we get this one to die 1 auto sooner, then, you know, these 3 minions, you know, I don't know if you've come across it, but like there's actually like a special rule for the very first minion wave in Minion AI. So like minions will always actually like aggro 1-1, right? It'll actually stay.
I didn't know that actually.
Yeah. So that's actually a special case rule in the game coding where the first wave will always focus 1-1 so that it doesn't, you know, RNG in one direction or the other. But past that, it's not guaranteed, right? It's a little bit more random. So this first wave will always be really, 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 you know, deterministic. It'll always happen in that way. And so because it'll always line up 1-1, right? When you finish CSing this minion, right? This minion here that was attacking that minion is now going to switch, right? And he'll auto either this one or this one, right? And when that happens, now you've kind of, even without autoing, they're still going to get desynced because one's going to be taking damage faster than the other. And so with just one auto, you can actually set up the wave in such a way that on the very first wave, you're basically guaranteed to be able to just like last it with just autos, right?
Yeah.
So
if you're not an idiot silver player, like I am.
So this auto here makes your life hard, right?
Yeah.
So this is the one that I actually kind of want to talk about, right? So when you do this auto here, right, it's so you know it doesn't make sense from a CSing perspective, but it does make sense from a wave management perspective, right?
Yeah.
If Mundo's continuously autoing the wave, you want to make sure that it doesn't kind of come back into you know this kind of awkward territory, right? And so it can be kind of you know scary, and you're kind of like trying to keep up, right?
Yeah.
So let me propose to you potentially a different strategy that you could go for, right? You actually have your Q, right?
I do.
So if all 3 of these minions get low at the same time, that's actually not a problem for you whatsoever. You can CS all 3 of those with a Q, right?
Yes.
So I guess, like, the fact that you have your Q here at level 1 sort of means that, like, it's okay for Mundo to go ahead by, like, an auto or 2, right? Because if worst comes to absolute worst, right, you can Q the wave and deal a whole truckload of damage to it that he just really can't match at level 1, right? Unless he starts W for whatever frickin' reason. That would be insane, okay? So,
Yeah.
you know, assuming that he is a sane player, which is not actually an assumption that we really want to rest on, right? Because this is
He's a
Silver.
Mundo player after all.
Yeah, he is a Mundo top player, so, like, we got to be kind of careful, right? Like, he might be doing some weird, wacky stuff, right? Like, you know, we can't necessarily assume, right? But if we do kind of assume, you know, with a small degree of certainty, right, that he's probably not going to start W level 1, then we can sort of say, like, yeah, this is like fine. He can't push faster than us, and so we're okay to kind of come down 1 extra auto here.
Yeah.
So
That's an auto. That's questionable, but
yeah, so that one to me looked like, so you autoed this one, then you autoed this one to try to keep the wave. That one looked to me just like a missed last hit, right?
it wasn't, not completely. It was a hybrid between a failed last hit and trying to manipulate the wave. So, like,
Yeah, both.
there's some gray area in between,
Yeah.
which you should never be, but I was there.
Sure. So one thing that I'll note is that if you do auto a minion intending to last hit it and it doesn't quite get last hit, right? I'd sort of like your instinct to be just to Q to try to get it here.
Yeah, fair. I usually do that. I don't do that for right now for some reason, but
So let's
I
dive
should
into
queue
that.
right now actually.
What is it?
but
What is the reason? So actually let's like back up a little bit further so we get like a little bit more like context, right? But like watching this clip, what's the reason that you don't actually Q right here?
I want to fight Mundo.
Yeah. You want to fight Mundo. So, looking back on that, is that something that you think is a good decision or a bad decision?
Do you want me to operate with hindsight here or just in the moment?
I want you to operate from this, from like this freeze frame. Okay, so we're gonna get you down to here, and without hindsight, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we just look at like that little bit up to here, right? What do we think of this?
I could have queued the wave and just trading stance this minion right here.
Yeah.
Just I could have queued these minions, then auto this.
I think if you queue, I think
and
if
then
you
just
queue the
walk
minion
away.
and all this minion, I think it's already over, right? I think he's actually already got this last hit, but you can definitely go for that minion.
Yeah, I can trading stance either one of these two minions. Two if I'm fast, but
Yeah.
very likely I'm not.
Yeah.
Uh,
So I'd like to kind of propose, I think, another like wave management rule, right? Which is like last hits are king, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're choosing between like getting a last hit and going for a trade, you should take the minion like 19 times out of 20.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that number, I think, sounds really high, and I think it is really high. But here's kind of the idea, okay? So let's talk a little bit about resource management. And I understand that this is like a, you know, I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but I think it's an important one, right? So when we think about resource management, right? Like let's talk about like literally what happens when we take each of these actions, right? So if we queue the wave and we get all 3 of these, right? We're gonna get like 63 gold.
Yeah.
Right? And we put our Q on a 9-second cooldown, right? Which means that, you know, if Mundo is scary, right? Especially if he gets wave control, right? You know, maybe there's like a good like 7-second window where like we're kind of like in an awkward spot, right? where maybe we get like zoned or threatened a little bit, and so maybe it hurts our wave control, right? When we look at going for the trade, right? I mean, like, let's actually see like kind of what we get here, right? So if we talk about like this as kind of being like the end of the trade, or actually I'll wait like here, right? I think this is actually the end of the trade because now the minion autos have landed, right?
Yeah.
So you took roughly, like 100 damage, right? And he took, I don't know, what does that look like? I mean, I guess we can see up here, right? He took like 200. Yeah, he took like, a little over 200. So 200 plus, right? So we've created for ourselves a 100 health like lead, right? So
yeah, kind of, sort of. We have more health to begin with either way, so
yes.
It's like
more technically, it's like almost 700 health to like 500 health.
We're
right?
yeah.
So we've kind of got like a 200.
This is like 750.
Yeah.
Ish. More. I don't know. Math is hard.
Yeah. So, but I think the actual numbers aren't so important as just kind of like what resource are they in, right? That's actually what I want to kind of focus on, right? So one gives us gold, another gives us a health lead, right? So the thing about a gold lead is that in a sense it's kind of a it's kind of permanent, right?
Yeah.
It's like once you get like gold, like nothing takes away that gold. You know what I mean? Like you get to spend it on items. Like you have that gold now. It's like in your inventory and it's like committed. Like the lead is like kind of secured already, right? But the thing about a health lead is when a reset happens or a kill happens, right? Or like both, right? Health leads go away, right? Like it's free to it's kind of free in a sense to return to base and to heal up, right? And so you can think of like a health lead as kind of a more transient, more temporary thing than a gold lead, right?
Yes.
And especially when we're talking about early game, when we're like generally like too weak to be pushing towers, right? Our primary objective is to like, collect golden experience so that we can get strong enough to like make plays that allow us to take towers so that we can win the game, right?
Yeah.
So generally in the early game, gold is king, right?
Yes.
And so when we think about like, trading resources and managing resources, generally when we think about a health lead, the only reason that we care about a health lead is what does it do to our ability to like create gold gaps, right?
Yeah.
So health leads are good, but we can actually kind of compare them here, right? So when we look at the fact that you actually gave up 2 minions here, right? Which would you rather have, 40 gold or this health lead?
40 gold.
You think so? What does this health lead represent? Right? What can we do with this health lead? Can we get more than 50? Can we get more than 40 gold, or deny him more than 40 gold?
We can get tenfold 40 gold if I play well enough.
Aha. If you play well enough. So that I think kind of comes down to it, right? It's like it is a riskier but higher reward style of play to go for trades over CS, right?
Yeah.
So the thing that I've kind of noticed is that playing well is sort of difficult.
Hadn't guessed that by now.
So, I mean, like 5-head, right? Like, playing well is difficult. But seriously, right? When we start thinking about, like, okay, like, what do we actually do to, like, win games with, like, the current level of skill that we actually have, right? It might be better to just take the gold, right?
Yes.
Unless you are, like, super confident that like this 100 health represents another 100 health lead like in the future, which you can then snowball into like killing him or like forcing him to base, like guaranteed, right?
Mm-hmm.
It starts to feel sort of risky, maybe in a way that we aren't comfortable with, right?
Yeah.
So especially when you're playing in such like a high variance environment where like junglers will just come top for no reason because they feel like it, and matchups will swing on a dime for, you know, reasons that are just totally ridiculous, right? Like, you know, when there's like this much high variance in like the like kind of whole like trading and all of that, right? We want to value health leads a lot less than maybe you see done at like higher levels of play. Kind of know what I'm saying here?
Yeah. Fair.
Specifically when we relate it to like gold leads, right? I think a good rule of thumb is like, if the trade puts you like, if the trade puts them in lethal range, like, okay, that's fine. Go for it, give up the CS, right? Because that's like, you're like one step away from like kind of cashing in on that health lead and like using it to actually like gain a permanent advantage by getting a better base timing than them, killing them, getting tower plates, denying a bunch of CS to the tower, like all that kind of stuff, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you're putting them in lethal range, like that's generally worth it. But if you're not putting them in lethal range, generally I'm going to say it's probably better to take the CS, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, you know, when you're looking back and you're like reviewing your games and you're thinking about your like your laning, right? This is something that I want you to actually kind of do, right? Like math out, you know, okay, like if I took a trade here and I gave up CS for it, how much gold did I give up for it, right? And was that, you know, am I comfortable with giving up that gold? Do I think that this health lead is worth paying that amount of gold,
Yes.
right? So,
He trading stance to me there, which is understandable.
yep. Now he's getting totally dooma.
And okay, so now he's dead.
Yep. So you're rewarded, right? And this is the thing that can be kind of
He was
both good and
range
bad
all along.
about playing in like lower ranks, right? Is that you will I don't even want to call this a bad habit, actually. Like, even though we just ran through like, okay, like maybe this health lead isn't worth it, right? Like, at the same time, like this is actually going to work more often than it doesn't for you right now, right?
Yeah, Mundo didn't play well though, but yeah.
No, he didn't. Like, there is counterplay here, but when we think about like the players that you're actually going to be playing against, like, this is not actually that unexpected of a result here, right? Yeah. So, you know, once we but here's kind of the thing that I'm sort of saying, right? It's like, if we go back to here, right? If we use the Q here, right, to get the CS, right? Mm-hmm. We can probably still do this same thing, right? It's just that the Q is going to be coming up like now, right? And so our first 100 health lead we get here, you know? It's this Q that starts the first one here, right?
Yeah.
And so now, you know, we have to continue to sort of like, you know, play this game where we do trading for like, you know, one extra wave, right? But, you know, if you're able to get level 2 and Q in here and get him to like 100 health, you know, instead of killing him, you just get him to 100 health. I actually feel like you get most of the same benefits.
He has to base at that point, yeah.
Yeah. And if he doesn't choose to base, guess what? You get to sit there and freeze for like 8 years. And if Kha'Zix comes top, you kill him, and then you kill Mundo, and then you go kill the tower, right? Like, it's actually like so free, right? So, you know, even though you're giving up the opportunity to you know, trade in that exact instant, and maybe for like the duration of that queue, you can sort of have faith that like this isn't the only opportunity you're going to get to queue this guy, You know what I mean? Like, if he's a bad player, he's going to be a bad player 5 seconds from now too, right?
Yes.
So you
Fair
can
point.
you can afford to be a little bit more patient in your aggression, I think, because I think you
Yeah,
can. Yeah,
I understand. Yeah.
you can get this same result and get the CS, and then where are you? Right?
Yeah, fair.
Maybe
I
then you can
completely
afford
agree.
double longsword, huh?
Uh, yes, I could.
Right? With an extra 40 CS here. Just saying.
With extra 40 CS
Extra
and
40 gold. My bad. My bad. My bad. My bad. My bad.
and
Yeah. No, extra 40 gold.
I could probably afford my first item by then, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's a bit, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay,
So that said,
Mundo just loses the lane here, pretty much.
yeah. So at this point, now we're like, okay, now we're kind of entering that like level 3 territory, and it's like, kind of sketchy, right? Like, okay, so Mundo like places a ward here, which is good. I like that you ping that. I like that you ping down. Oh god, they're all fighting. Mundo's going for whatever reason. That's hysterical. He loses so much. XD. He's mid, by the way. So now this is actually like a, this is an interesting novel situation here. Okay, right? So now we have a conundrum, right? Mundo is no longer actually in the lane at all, right? What does the wave manipulation look like here? God, it's unclear.
yeah. Freeze? Question mark.
Yeah. So
Try
run me
again.
through your different
Like-
options. What are the different things that you can do?
So I can either choose to push the wave and roam to where Mundo is and maybe get a kill or two, or I can freeze the wave, get like a 10-15 CS lead. If Mundo dies, game is over. If Mundo does not die, top lane is over.
Yeah. So which of those do you like better?
I prefer freezing the lane.
I agree. I think that part of the information here is how far away is this fight happening, right? So when we
Further
look at the
away.
fact that the fight is happening all the way like down here, right? When this is what you tab over and see, right? It's like you actually have to start thinking in like seconds, right? Like how long does it take a level 2 Kled to clear like 10 minions, right? Like literally the fight will already be over, right? Pushing and roaming is like technically physically an option, but by the time you do it, it's no longer useful.
If I had ult, I could have.
Sure.
If
If this
this
was level
happened
6,
for-
then yeah, no, it's a completely different world. But this is level 2.
Yeah.
So there
Yeah,
isn't
yeah.
actually so that's I think actually one of the things that I kind of want to talk about, right? Is it's like, again, if pushing and roaming is an option and you can come down here to collapse on like a 2v3 fight and make it a 3v3 and like you're stronger in the 3v3, then yeah, no, like that's like a pretty good thing to do, right? But there's quite a bit of information that you have that if you're able to interpret it correctly, right? It's like the distance from you to them, how many minions there are, what will happen if you don't kill any minions and you just go immediately, right? Like all of these are things that you need to have a good internal mapping of like, if I do this, this is like literally what the game will allow me to do, right? And there's like no configuration of events here that like actually allows you to go, right? And I said I wasn't going to talk about like differences in like what we believe is possible, but I guess I lied. I was going to try not to, but I did anyway. But this is the sort of thing that you start to kind of gain by experience. Is you try to go roam a couple of times and you find out that it doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
So you manage to freeze here. You go ahead and all in or you don't all in, you just go for like a nice short trade. Continue to CS. And look at this, your wave management's going really great, right?
And he walks into me and
He walks into you.
Yeah.
He is like so doomed. Top is over. GG.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
So now here, this is another interesting moment of wave management. So after you get a kill, once again, you've got a couple options, right? So when we take a look at this, right? This is the moment of the kill, right? So with this freeze frame here, right? How should you think about managing the wave from this position?
Okay, so what happened is I know Kha'Zix's top lane
Hmm.
somewhere. He was top lane when the fight in mid lane happened, which is 40 seconds ago.
Okay.
I know Scuttle is up, so he could be doing Scuttle crap.
Okay.
I am low on health.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter because I'm Kled and I can get to 80% health 2 seconds from now, but I'm fairly low on health.
Mm-hmm.
And I am taking some ridiculous minion aggro.
So again, we come back to the idea of the jungler scope, right? If Kha'Zix is right here, what options are prevented from you?
Freezing the wave.
Potentially, right? If Kha'Zix walks out, then yes, freezing the wave is no longer an option. But if he's just sitting here, you could still freeze. He has to walk out to make you not freeze.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah. I know Mundo doesn't have teleport.
Yes.
So my idea was, okay, I get a kill. I can CS all these minions and probably the next wave as well. But as long as I like hard shove it, so like use my W and that kind of stuff to push this wave, I should be able to get it into like zone 2 with like a cannon and a few caster minions advantage, which then like either pushes into 1 or Mundo shoves it back. So
okay,
my attempt here is there is a canyon minion here. If I shove this wave hard enough, and I don't know if I can, but if I shove this wave hard enough, I can make him lose more than I can do by freezing. I don't know if it's accurate. I don't.
So
really
so basically you're saying like if I can get the wave into his tower, then that's better, right?
Yeah.
So I agree. I think in this situation you can't get it into the tower, and I can try to explain how I know that, right? So one of the things that is real interesting to know is because of kind of the whole math of like how like minion movement speed and like reinforcement waves and their timing every 30 seconds from the base kind of works, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can actually use the game timer as like a proxy for understanding like can I get the wave into the turret before the next wave arrives to catch it or not, right?
Yeah.
So I happen to know these timings, right? So in a side lane, if the minions are passing this, if your minions are passing the center of the lane, uninhibited, right? There's no enemy minions by like X24 or X54 on the in-game timer. Then it will make it into the turret before the next reinforcement wave arrives.
Yeah.
It'll actually crash, right? And if it's later than X24 or X54, then it won't.
I would be fine with like close to 30 even.
So you're saying you're okay if it gets caught right here?
Yeah, I mean, like I'm fine if like so my reasoning is if it gets caught right there, like I have
a solid amount of gold. If it gets caught right here, then I can worst case scenario I can TP back, shove the wave in.
Mm.
I have TP advantage. I really don't want to use it, but
Mm-hmm.
theoretically, if it should be necessary, yes, I could do that. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it like the further up it is, the better it is, obviously. But I would be fine by not having like the entire minion wave crash into the turret. Um, my plan is to I'm like I have solo killed Mundo twice here, but
Yeah.
I am up like a few CS.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I want to get as much CS as possible. Um, and I don't think that
Do you have a sense
constitutes.
that you get more CS by pushing first?
Yes, yes, I think I do.
Okay. Actually, I want to question that. I don't actually think that you get more CS if you push first, because if we're looking at the eventuality where you do teleport, right?
Mhm.
Then because basically we're saying like we're fine with this happening, right? So let's say that we actually knew that this was going to happen. Let's say that we knew for sure that it was going to go right here and that we would have to teleport back, right? And we were
Yeah,
comparing that option versus the option of not pushing, right? So if we're comparing those two options, right, then we
hmm
can say if you let's say you just the first option is pushing and getting it there. And let's say the second option is you just like look at this wave, just like okay, and you just like run into the bush, immediately base, and immediately go straight into a teleport back, right?
hmm
Thanks for the follow, by the way. Uh, if that is what you do, then I think the only minions that have like a chance to die are like maybe like these. Like this one's already dead, and like maybe these two die, right? So because you're basically it's like the like 8 seconds that it takes you to recall, and then like what is it like 6 seconds, 5 seconds? I don't know.
4 seconds,
4 seconds, 4 seconds to TP back,
as far as I
right?
know. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe you add an extra second, so maybe it's like 15 seconds, right? So maybe like these four die actually, and like this one's close to death, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you lose like 4 CS if you TP now. So
Yeah.
the so when we compare that to if you shove, right? If you shove, then there's like the minions that get caught here are going to start dying while you're basing and TPing back. And because your wave is going to be like pretty large at that point, like it's going to have a cannon in there. I
hmm
could see 4 minions dying before you actually get back, right?
Yeah. Fair.
So I actually think it's pretty much the same number of minions that you're going to be missing for, whether you push or whether you just freeze.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
But
and
my
yeah,
issue with freezing here is the minions are currently aggro towards me.
yes,
Therefore, my wave will go to town on the caster minions.
it
Uh,
will.
my fear is if I TP back, my wave will push anyway.
Mm,
So my wave is focusing the enemy minions.
it is.
There is a cannon in there. It shreds fruit. It shreds.
It does.
My English is atrocious.
So,
Um, so the problem I have is if I base right now, or
mhm,
like I walk into the bush, I base,
yeah,
I TP back. Um, I think, like I feel the wave is gonna push away from me, regardless.
like uncontrollably.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
If you
I
push it,
I,
it's going to
I
be pushing away from you uncontrollably as well. What makes you more comfortable with it in
no
the previous situation?
no.
No,
It is not uncontrollably because I will control the pace at which it moves the enemy.
by speeding it
As
up
in, yeah, or slowing it down. Don't know why
or
I want
slowing
to
it
do
down.
that, but I could.
If you're
As
pushing, aren't you just speeding it up? If we're talking about the situation where you like push it in and
I
it
could
freezes
I
here.
could I could be pushing slowly, and then it's
Mm,
uh
okay.
as in I would
change the pace, but I would not be speeding it up per se.
Okay. So
Don't know why I would want to do that, but I could.
yeah, I think what I want to do is I want to kind of like zoom out again, right? So we talked about this whole thing like level 1 with like like the queue versus the trade, right? And I think we can do kind of a similar sort of thing here, right? So it's difficult to put a gold value on like control over the wave. You know what I'm saying? That's like that's yet another kind of like temporary advantage that by all means in like high level like well played games is like really really important, right? But just like being realistic here, right? Pushing into the Mundo when he's already died twice is uncontrollably isn't actually that bad, because if he tries to freeze on you, you can just break it, right? You're like unbelievably like stupid strong stonks powerful right now. like we're talking like
okay.
you're 2-0 and 7 and like 17 CS at 4 minutes, and he's like just died with no TP to get back, right? Like he is like so unbelievably doomed right now, right? That I think like the situation where like he's freezing right here isn't actually that bad for you, because you're like strong enough now to like potentially even like 1v2 if Kha'Zix were to come top with no flash,
Probably, yeah.
right?
Yeah, because Ziggs doesn't have flash for another 1.5 minutes, yeah.
Yeah. So keeping in mind that you are like that far ahead, right? I don't actually think we need to worry super much about like can I or can I not get lane control from like a certain position, right? You essentially now, regardless of what the position is, can move it to whatever position you want if you have enough time.
Yeah.
Mundo can't stop you from manipulating the wave anymore based on, who has the larger wave. You've like overcome that now. When we say like the lane is over, right? When he dies the second time, that's really what that means, actually. When you like dive into like, okay, what do we mean by the lane is over? He can no longer manipulate the lane.
He has 0 wave control.
Yeah.
Like if I am not an
Yeah,
idiot and
if you
don't get
play
one
it
before
properly, then whatever the position is, no matter what the size of the waves is, you can like win the fight if he takes it. If he takes it with you, no matter what the wave looks like, right? In a straight up 1v1 sense. And that is the moment at which the lane ends, because now no matter where it is, no matter what the wave manipulation happens, no matter whether his jungler comes up and pressure ganks for him and like, helps him get the wave right, none of it matters. You can just all in and win the all in hard enough that he can't walk up, right? And so once you hit that point where you go from being even to being like ahead, and it's not that you're like dominating, it's not like you're gonna win, it's not the game is actually over. Like we like to hyperbolize, but the game isn't actually over. You're just ahead, right?
Yeah.
And this is what being ahead means. It means that you can basically win any fight that can occur in a 1v1, right?
Yeah.
So and that then gives you wave control unless he chooses to die. Unless he doesn't know. And given that he's died twice, he probably doesn't know, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, I actually think it being there isn't even that bad for you, right? But even taking a step back from that, right? Let's actually talk about like what. So aside from the concepts of like wave control and like all of that, which I'm going to just assert from being this far ahead doesn't actually matter, right? Even aside from the fact that doesn't matter, let's talk about what happens in terms of actual concrete resources that are permanent. Let's talk about your golden XP and like your itemization, right?
Yeah.
So we kind of talked already about the idea that like, you're going to kind of, and this is generally true sort of no matter what, by the way. This idea that like you're going to lose somewhat sort of the same amount of minions no matter when you back, right? Like it has more to do with like the timing of when you back, like relative to like where the waves are, right, and like whether they're actually fighting or not, than it does like whether you back before or after shoving, right? So in this situation and most situations that look like this, right, where like they have like a largish wave coming into you and you have to decide whether you're going to push it out or like freeze it here after you've killed someone. It's going to be, you're going to get roughly the same CS no matter what, because you're going to lose some minions somewhere. So if we assume that the actual number of CS that you get is even in both scenarios, right? One of the advantages of pushing first is you get to realize that gold before you base, and so you can actually spend it, right? Where if you choose to freeze, then you realize that gold after you come back, right? And so you're not able to spend it. So one of the important factors when we're deciding whether to push or whether to freeze here is, what does our base look like, right? What are we trying to buy here, right? So when we see that we have like 650 gold, right? I'm assuming that you're going for like a Tiamat, right?
No.
No.
No, I am
Okay,
not.
what are you going for?
Blade of Ruin King Rush.
Blade of the Ru- Okay, right. That is the build. I forgot. So
Given
Given that-
that W.
yeah, given that you're going for that, right?
Yeah.
What are your different what are the different meaningful breakpoints in gold for you, right?
So at 550 I can afford a
Vamp Scepter.
Vamp Scepter.
Yeah.
At 550 plus 350 Hello Intro, that is 900 gold.
Yeah.
I can afford a Vamp Scepter and a Longsword.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you think that by CSing these like 5 minions plus the like incoming wave that you will get an extra enough to get you to 900?
Yes.
Okay.
If I get
So let's check that math. So if we think of this as like 20, 20, 20, 20, right? This right here.
One, though.
Yeah, you won't get the bottom one. We're just taking these 4. So this is like 80 by itself, right? So if we add 80, right? Now we're looking at like 730.
Yeah.
Right? So then when we look at this wave, right? It's going to be another 320s. So that'll be an extra 60, which brings us to like 800, right? And then we look at the melee minions. How much are they worth?
Between 20 and 25. I don't know exactly.
Sure.
21,
So let's
22-ish.
let's assume that it's 25, right? Even if it's 25, now we're at like 875.
Yeah. One note: it is a cannon wave.
Ah, it's a cannon wave. Okay, so if you get the cannon, then yes, that does kind of bring you up to 900, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's pretty much
And you can
just
even
about
miss
exactly.
afford to miss one minion somewhere.
So you can afford to miss 1 minion.
Yeah.
Are you going to miss 1 minion?
I might. I highly doubt it.
Are you going to miss 2 minions? Is it possible?
I might. Yes, of course it's possible.
So
In IIRC, I do not.
sure.
Because I think I back with enough gold, but I'm not entirely sure.
So yeah, let's actually like play the clip out. So you end up getting the cannon. It gives you 900, and you're able
This
to
is the
basically
wave
go for.
after.
And you actually go for all the way for like even this wave after it, right? So that gives you 1,000 gold.
Mundo.
Now here's
And
Mundo.
tries to freeze here, but
Yep.
he presses his W.
Nice. I don't think he was trying to freeze. But yeah.
I mean, he pulled the wave though.
But either way, yeah. So this is definitely like a so here's now kind of the question, right? Like, how much more powerful are you for having this extra longsword?
It is maybe a tiny bit overkill. But in a sense, it is also not. Because it does, like.
I don't think it matters that much.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think it matters that much.
Silver, by the way.
The reason that I'll say I don't think it matters that much is because even without you having it, you solo killed him twice.
Yeah, I mean the late is over whether or not I have the
right.
longsword or not.
You know, the only fight that it maybe swings is like the 2v1 against the Kazakhs in some situations.
I
right?
haven't seen the Kazakh since the beginning of the game.
Yeah, we haven't seen the Kazakhs since the beginning of the game. We don't know where he is, and let's be real, I don't actually think that like
Yeah,
I don't think it's a
yeah.
large percentage of those fights that it swings, right?
No, fair.
I think that you are roughly the same. Like getting the Vamp Scepter is unbelievably important, right? Like that gives you the ability to trade, back off, heal. Like, you know, if he suddenly starts to play like a much better player than he's been playing, like for whatever reason, unlikely,
Yeah.
then you
But
know, like
it also allows me to like win a fight and then
yeah,
overstay ridiculously.
yes, you can start to stay in lane. Yeah, so Vamp
Yeah.
Scepter really 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 important. Extra Longsword, I actually don't think it actually adds that much value, right? So now when we start thinking about it, you know, the question is basically like, how much gold can we deny if we freeze instead, right? So when we end up killing him, right, and like this is like our wave state, right, just a little bit further back, so we kill him, right, when we push, right, maybe like these 2 minions die, maybe this 3rd minion dies, right, and then all the rest of them, right, like this wave here and also the one that's like coming out from the base, right, those all live, and those all get to kind of come into Mundo. And like you said, right, like you like put you know, put this whole big minion wave in, and then he just kind of presses W and eats it up, right?
Yeah.
So he gets all of these minions, right? If you freeze, right, you get roughly the same amount of CS, kind of like we talked through before, but his giant minion wave kills off like most of this wave and a good chunk of the next wave too before he's able to make it back. Suddenly he goes from missing like 2 minions to missing like 10 minions, right? So which would we prefer? Having an extra longsword for this next deploy, or denying Mundo 10 minions that we otherwise don't get to deny him?
The second one.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
That feels like way better.
I don't think it's gonna make that massive a difference.
No, I don't think so either. I think that this game is like done, like or not done, right? Like because the matchup is already so swung because of like the way that you played it, levels like 1, 2, and 3, right? And the fact that you're so enormously ahead, like this is not actually sort of like you said, right? Like this isn't really a game where wave management had any real impact on like who won the game or lost the game.
Yeah.
You know, like you just kind of PvP'd him to death and he died, and there it was, right?
Yeah.
So that said, I think that like, so this tells me maybe we actually don't need to talk about wave management, right? That's one thing that it tells me. And B is that like, Coach, by the way, totally lost my train of thought, have no recollection whatsoever of what I was going to say. How embarrassing. I think the point the point is, right, if you can get it into his tower, the reason that that's important is because it denies him the minions, right? That's what makes pushing equivalent to shoving from a golden EXP gen perspective, right? And what makes it better than freezing is that you also get tower damage, potentially you get plates, potentially you get like a little bit more protection, you know, on like your tower if the matchup is still somewhat even, right?
Yeah.
And maybe you don't have to spend your teleport to get back, right?
Yeah.
But I think the thing that I want to really kind of drill in here though is him catching a giant wave here as you're backing should feel like a fail state. That should be something that you're trying to avoid, right? When that happens, when you're basing, when you're stronger than him, right? And you find yourself basing and he's catching the wave as you're basing and gets to CS it for free, that should feel really bad. Because generally, you know, let's even say that it's a different scenario than this. Like, let's say that you're actually like already pushing. You know, let's say that this is only like, you know, 3 minions, right? And so with the cannon, it's like definitely going to push. I actually still think you base first, because even while it's starting to end up pushing towards you, some of the minions are going to die. Probably the cannon dies, and by the time and even if it is technically pushing for you, it doesn't push instantly, right? Just because you have a minion lead doesn't mean that it immediately ends up in his tower. It means that it eventually ends up in your tower if you do nothing, right? So you get to base, you get to come back, and if the wave is like here and slightly bigger for you, you have, you know, like even another wave's worth of distance, right? Where it'll be slow pushing, which you can just stand in front of the wave and zone him off, and what's he going to do, right?
Yeah. Fair.
So I think as general principles, if he's catching the wave while you're recalling, that should feel bad. And
It does, yes.
yeah, and it does. And like if he has like a largish wave coming in and it's like, you know, partially frozen here, you're going to be missing roughly the same amount of minions whether you base first or base second. Those are, I think, the two things that I want you to kind of take away as like general rules. That said, I actually think let's, you know, given the content of this VOD, let's actually just like stop talking about wave management because that seems entirely irrelevant to this particular game, and let's talk about how do you push your lead from here. So you go ahead, you do your slow base. He catches all these minions.
Yes.
You get yourself your Vamp Scepter and this. You start heading back top. And the other thing too is think about the XP that this gives him, right? He was probably like level 4 and like 20, you know?
He was level 3 or something.
Yeah, right? So not only is he, you know, when you freeze, right, not only are you denying him the gold, you're also denying him the XP. And that's actually even bigger than the gold is at this early level.
Yeah. And he shoves waves into me, which is pretty interesting.
Yep. So at this point...
Aha! Yes.
Now this here is kind of interesting. You started pushing again, which if he was better would have resulted in him, you know, like kind of recognizing that it's going to come into him and that you're pushing it, and he can just kind of back away and then you can't kill him. But he doesn't, and that's fine. So
I at this point, like, matchup switches to 6. I have a pretty big lead.
You do.
Pretty big. I have a massive lead.
Yeah.
I want to kill the turret. I have the mullet. We don't talk about this.
Understandable.
I have demolish. I have my W.
And you have a giant wave. And he's dead.
Yeah. I can get 2 turret plates here.
Yeah.
And whatever happens.
Yeah, even if Kha'Zix comes, I don't think it matters at all.
I can just do this because I'm far ahead. And at this point, it's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. So now, are you actually going to show that you can stay? Let's find out.
Yes, I can because I'm Kled.
He doesn't even know. Pepe laugh in the chat. So now you can.
And Diana goes.
When you lifesteal, does it lifesteal on a Kled or Skarl? On a Kled, yeah.
Kled when Kled's not full HP. Skarl if Kled is.
Okay, interesting. So now you do get to, and that's a much easier decision that you made there with the wave. You just kind of shove it in, and then you come back. Interesting. You go for a refillable here. That actually doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Well, my idea is because I might be so far ahead. I'm still not a good player, TM. So if I walk into the turret,
if you do the same thing that you did the first time,
yeah,
then you'll be okay. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't hate it, but I don't think it adds much value to you. I think you're better off.
I understand. I had 200 gold, and I hate sitting on gold.
Yeah.
Kind of chronic.
So here you go ahead and you. So this I think is actually worth talking about, right? So in this situation, you kind of have a freeze ready, but you see those 3 minions and you're like, delicious. And you go for the Q. I actually think this is a pretty largish wave manipulation mistake, right?
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
So this is the sort of thing that I was hoping to see, and this is the sort of thing that you can start trying to fix, because this is actually relevant to you pushing your lead, right? Because now the wave no longer pulls into you, and now he's just kind of getting to walk up and do this, which is hysterical. Oh, and you queue a second time.
And I'm blind to the mini map, but we don't talk about that.
Yep.
So like,
Had you ever thought about just like tanking the queues to deny him more CS because you have lifesteal?
um, I know it is a thing, but I usually don't play champions with lifesteal early on.
Sure.
Play the Rune King buff is a really recent addition, and I rarely play Kled, so like,
Yeah.
I
Okay,
don't
well.
feel confident tanking 25% current health queues. Window, by the way.
Give it a
Uh,
shot. I think definitely when you're, if there's any time to try it, it's when you're 4-0. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
Nah,
at this
I
point,
see.
like, we don't actually care whether you win this match, right? You winning this match is actually completely irrelevant for you on like your ability to climb. What matters is that from this match you learn something which allows you to play better in the next 1,000 matches that you play, right?
Yeah. I can see that.
So it's important to,
Oh no.
if you aren't sure if you can do it, try.
So I roam down with my ulti, and I'm like, okay, I can't get to bot lane fast enough. So I just take Scott.
Well, I mean, I think that
I
you can
mean,
get to bot lane fast enough, my good sir.
yes, but I mean, the fight was already looking bad, and I could TP bot lane. The moment Diana TPs, if I can freeze this, so I go walk down. This is when the fight is lost, I think, because Kha'Zix is here probably as well. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gone for this fight.
You can't assume that.
Can I not assume that?
Nope, can't
Let's just
assume
go
that.
back. Okay, if we go back to here,
The reason that you can't assume that is because this is silver.
fair. Okay,
I
can
think
I
this
assume?
is actually, I think, really illustrative of something that I'm almost certain that you suffer massively from, which is, and this is not just this situation. This is me reading into like the like 2.5 sessions that we've had now, and kind of like our interactions over the course of this. So you are a player, much like me, that really enjoys the theory of the game, right? And learning about the theory and trying to apply it, and like figuring out like what is like the correct optimal action in like all of the different scenarios that can arise, right? Like that's a big part of what makes the game fun. Am I wrong about that?
Not in the slightest.
Okay, excellent. So here is the thing that, and this trips me up too, right? So this is why I'm telling you, right? This game is not being played by people who understand the like correct way to play, right? And so your knowledge of theory here is actually harming you more than helping you. The fact that you assume that Kha'Zix is bottom when you haven't seen him, and then you like call off like a TP play because of it, is costing you the ability to turn this fight and snowball the game, right? If there is anything, and my guess is that this actually happens like quite often, not just in this scenario, but in a ton of other scenarios, right? Where you like assume that the enemy is going to play properly, and because you assume that they're going to play properly, you field like the correct counterplay to them playing properly, and then when they play improperly, you actually end up losing out on it.
Yeah,
right?
that happens
often enough that I
Yeah, right?
want
Like,
to
you've
admit
noticed
to
that,
it, but
right?
not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right? Like, that happens, like, all the time, right? And when that happens, right, what is your response? Ah, stupid Elo, like, people don't play properly, this doesn't make any sense. Right?
Yeah, and I go cry.
Yeah, right? Like, I'm here to, like, I, like, understand on a spiritual level this feeling, okay? Because I have it myself. So, the thing to recognize here is that that entire mentality is terrible, right? And if you want to actually climb, if you want to have actual success in solo queue playing with actual humans against actual humans, right?
Yes.
What you need to do more often than not is play to what you see on your screen. If you see that this Mundo has died twice to you in an all-in, you can make a pretty safe assumption that he's going to do that again, right?
Yes.
If you don't see Kazakhstan bottom, you can, like, you can't, and I realize this literally goes against everything that I was saying earlier, and it's
Yeah.
like, you know,
yes, it will.
it absolutely does, and, like, that's okay. I think this actually overrides, right? And that is, like, it's my I'm like literally in the process of learning this myself, right? But, like, you just have to play to what you see, right? And so if you see a play in bottom that's happening that you can TP into, that you can win if Kha'Zix isn't there, I think you have to take it, right? Because some amount of the time he'll be there, some of the time he won't be there, okay?
Yeah.
If he isn't there, you actually win the game. You get, like, a quadra kill, and then the game actually goes from, like, you are ahead and, like, in your lane you are doing well, to the whole map is ahead, and now, like, you just literally get to death ball down mid and, like, win the game, right? Like, the reward is win the game, okay? And the cost is some amount of the time Kha'Zix is there, and it's not even that you lose the fight, it's just that now it's a 4v4.
And I'm for it.
And you can win that. Like, you're 4-0. Like, you have Cutlass. You have ult. You're fine. Like, maybe you die, but, like, it's still a close fight, right? Whereas, think about what is the opportunity cost of not TPing here, right? If Kha'Zix is there, they're both dead for sure, right? And now their bottom lane is ahead, and that sucks, right? And if Kha'Zix isn't there, then it still looks kind of bad for them, and they might die 2v2, right?
Yes.
It's guaranteed bad if you don't TP, right? And it's from, like, acceptable to amazing if you do TP.
Yes.
Right?
That makes a lot of sense.
So
it is, however, a tiny bit difficult to think about that when you're
right?
You're like, "Hello, Mundo.
Absolutely,
I want to knock on your door."
It's totally crazy, right? But, like, this is, you know, I did, like, a session with a guy on like, intro to jungling, right? And, like, the number one thing that I told him is, like, you know, okay, so, like, I can teach you, like, how to path. I can teach you to, like, look at the lanes and, like, you know, predetermine how the matchups should go and which lanes should be pushing and which lanes should be able to set you up for gank opportunities, and therefore this is how you should path, right? This is how you predict how junglers path in like, LCS. But guess what? Yeah. That literally doesn't help you whatsoever. In solo queue jungling, you know what you do? You show up at one side of the jungle, you power clear to the other side of the jungle, and while you do that, you F-key like an absolute madman, looking at all of your lanes with your eyes to see if there is a gank opportunity. Because there will be gank opportunities in matchups that make absolutely no sense. Like, it's gonna be, like, what's, like, an amazing matchup? Like, it's like... It's like Twitch Janna, okay? It's like Twitch Janna, bottom lane, versus, like, I don't know, like Kog'Maw Braum, okay? Like, the, like, least interactive lane possible. Okay, you, like, pan down there at level 2, both of them are 500 HP, are like 200 HP, okay? Like, it's gonna happen every single time. Like, things don't make sense. Things don't make sense in this elo, and you need to embrace that. You don't need to fight it. You need to embrace that, okay? And the way that you embrace that is by looking and reacting not to what you think should happen, but to what actually happens. Play to the game that is in front of you, not the one that's in your head. Yes. And I know that that sucks, because it sucks for me too. I hate it. I hate it. I hate that this is the way that it is. I hate that solo queue isn't like
I hate people.
better. You know what I mean? That like
Yeah,
that we're not in an elo where we can like apply the theory that like applies at the highest
Yeah, I
levels,
mean,
right? But like
yeah,
realistically,
Can you com-
in
can you
order
compare
to
any
get there,
solo queue though?
in order to get there, in order to get to high elo, where you can have these fun, interesting games that are like deep, right? You have to first be able to win in these very, very shallow games, right? It's like, Holy, if you're still in the chat, I don't think you are, but like, once upon a time, I was like working with a player, and he's like a really good player. Like I think he's in like Master Grandmaster now, right? And he was like, yeah, like when I smurf, like I don't play smart. I like follow my team and do all sorts of dumb shit, and it like works, right? Like he said, if my team goes woof, I go woof too. It's like I think that's like the perfect image, okay? Right? Like if my team goes woof, I go woof too, right? Like this is what you like ape strong together, okay? Like this is the mentality that you have to have here, right? Like and I know that that's like emotionally difficult, right? Because like the theory is like what we got here for. Like this is like what matters, right? Like and this is like where the fun is for us, right? Because we're intellectuals, and that's the like way that we enjoy things is by analyzing them until we understand every mote, every particle within them to the utmost degree. But like from a performance perspective, that actually just doesn't matter. None of it matters. And I've actually just been speaking complete nonsense to you this whole time. None of this stuff that I was talking about today matters at all. Forget everything I said. The one thing that you need to do, the one thing that will help you more than anything else, is just keeping your eyes open and playing to what's in front of you. And that's actually like a like difficult instruction to follow. I want to point that out. That's like not actually like it sounds simple. I'm making it sound simple, but like that actually has its own difficulty to it, right? Because when you actually open your eyes and start looking around at what's going on, you'll find that you don't actually know what to do in a lot of these situations, right? Because they're not supposed to happen. You know what I'm saying? Like who is familiar, who has deeply like understood the theory of playing like against a Mundo as a Kled when you're 2 levels up and have like 4 kills. Like that's a weird game position to be. It's not that weird, right? It would be a lot weirder if you were the Mundo and you're the one that's 4-0. That's really uncharted territory, okay? But like that's gonna happen too, okay? If you actually understand how to lane, right? So So how do we actually do this? How do we actually do this? I think the thing that I want you to do, right, is I want you to try to just notice when you are making assumptions. Okay? And that's just like about anything, right? If you assume that your jungler is going to go top, don't assume it. Don't assume anything. Play to literally what's on your screen and nothing else. If you assume that a matchup is going to go a certain way because that's how it's supposed to go, don't assume that. Just don't assume that. You just don't know, right?
Yeah.
And this whole like what this comes down, it's impossible to follow a negative instruction. I'm giving you all these don'ts when really what I should be giving you is like do's. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to be in the present. And I want you to look, right? Those are the things that are important. Be in the present and look. You even say it. I'm not happy. I don't enjoy these kind of games. 100% with you, buddy. I like completely. I feel like I understand you. That may just be like me enamored with my own like idea of who you are, and not actually, but like.
No, you're pretty accurate.
Okay.
I've had
right.
I have had a chronic like thinking I am a higher rank than I actually am. Like since starting to play like CS:GO like 4 years ago now.
Yo, okay, like let me just hit you with something I actually just figured out too, right? This is how we trick ourselves, right? We say I should be higher elo, so I'm gonna play like I am higher elo.
That's not how it works.
That's not how it works. Yeah,
I have tried that. It does not work.
yeah. You wouldn't be here if it had
sad it
worked,
doesn't work.
right? You wouldn't be here if it had worked. So
Yes.
we have to unlearn your correct habits and learn incorrect ones that actually work.
I have to learn stupidity.
You have to learn to go woof.
That's such a great exclamation.
So this
So-
should 100% be a TP, you know what I'm saying? Like, think about
Yeah,
it. If
yeah.
you'd actually TP'd here, like, what would be happening right now? Like, now Syndra's here,
Kha'Zix is there.
Kha'Zix
we
is
could have
there.
won that fight. We could've
100%,
won that fight.
right?
If Lee Sin is there, it's a 4v4. We could have won
Yeah.
that fight. I think
So-
we still kind of win the fight.
Yeah, that's the scary thing, right? Like, if you TP to that ward, like, right there, like, you probably still win that fight. That's
I
horrifying.
could have TP to the. I could have TP to the wave. Like
Yeah,
no big
you can
deal.
TP to the wave. You can TP to that ward. You know, you can type to Syndra to have her put down her trinket, and then you TP to her. Like, there's like so many different ways that you can get into bottom lane, and all of them are amazing, right? It's like
I could
once
flash ult.
once you are fed, just throw yourself at them. Just like actually just go ham, right?
Yeah. Yes, that is why I hate playing against Darius.
Yeah, because he can just do that, right?
Yeah.
Hi, Cled.
And this happens.
Hi, Mundo. You're dead again. Isn't that sad?
He might.
Oh no! Why did you press E again? Oh no! Oh, you still get him. It's fine. All right, it was fine. It was the correct play. We're gonna do some results-based reasoning. Are you ready for it? Because it worked, it was the right play. Isn't that painful? Doesn't that hurt your soul?
Oh yeah, this
Embrace
is not
it.
the only time it happens.
Embrace it.
It happens like 1 or 2 more times, I think. Up to 2 more times because I go 7-1 at some point.
Yep.
And I'm greeting for Thor points because.
It's not greed.
No, fair. I mean,
You're
Yeah,
assuming
fair.
again. No, seriously. This is actually like where the value is, okay? Like, you want to climb?
I am
This is
just
what you
getting
have to
plays.
notice, okay? So you have to learn to notice that. You have to learn to catch that instinct. And be like, no, I'm gonna play to what's in front of me. It's
I
not
get
greed.
Tars here. I think I get Tars here.
Yeah.
Or not yet, at least. I could if I wanted to.
Yeah.
But there is stuff happening both lane, and I could TP if I wanted to. I think
You
I
could.
do. I might. I don't think I do.
Nah, they already won it. It's fine.
Yeah. Exactly. And yeah. So
So
Game's
start
over.
thinking, like, at this point, like, how can I punish them? Right? That's
Uh,
the question you have to ask yourself over and over again. Is like, now that I am strong, how do I win?
this way.
Agreed.
That way. Hello.
By go. Go is how we win. Woof.
And Clyde is one of the best champions for that.
Oh,
Yeah. Hello.
I really want you to rein in on that pressing buttons because there's buttons to press, though. That one's a painful one.
There. That's yeah, that hurts. It pained me when I did it. It pained me when I didn't.
Yeah.
When I watched it again.
Yeah. So those are the other sorts of things that you really gotta kind of... Those are things that I think are actually useful to focus on, right? Because it's like... Once you can, like...
Oh, hello, Diana. Sorry.
Once you can win, start trying to win more efficiently. But, like, don't ever stop trying to win. Yeah, like, you're gonna fight this guy. Who is he? Who do you think you are, Mundo? Like, no. You're backing away? Absolutely not. It's time to go woof. You're 7-0. They can't kill you.
No, I missed my cue. Don't worry about it.
Who cares? No, it's actually good. You play the game that's in front of you. Your Q's on cooldown. You actually have to play around that. But you can't assume anything. Like, okay, low key, I actually think you made an assumption here. Let's see if you can spot it.
I assume I can't 1v1 him because my abilities are on cooldown.
Sure, if that's the layer that it's at. I think the layer that I thought of is like, he's not an idiot. He knows that I can wrap around and like, he'll get these CS and then he'll back away, right? Because he knows I'm strong,
Fair.
right? No, he doesn't.
I can.
Look, this guy. Okay, and that's the thing, right? Don't assume that they're making any predictions either, because they're not. Okay, like this guy. I don't want to like insult the players that you're playing with and like say that they're like that they are bad, right? But like their play is really bad. Okay, like it is probably all that is going through this guy's head right now is like, me see minion, me hit minion. Like, we have evidence that says that that's the way that his thought process works, because that's how it's worked for the first 12 minutes and 55 seconds of this game. Okay? Once you see that he is an idiot, start to assume that he is an idiot. Okay?
I can see that, yes.
Right? Your move here is this. This is not a move that makes any sense. This is not a move that should work, but it's going to work. It's going to work. And you know I'm right.
Yes, I do.
Okay? Woof. We must bark like the dogs.
Is there ever not going to be woof?
No. It's woof all the way up. If you want deep, tactical, interesting gameplay, first, get Masters in solo queue. Then look for a team. Then you will get what you want.
Yes. But first I need to get through silver, then gold.
First you need to get silver. And to get through silver, you're going to need to woof. It's not okay. It's not enough to like slow win your matchup safely and go like 2-0 with like a 30 CS lead. Like, that doesn't carry in silver, my friend. You have to go 8-0 with a 50 CS lead. Twice in one game. You have to win your lane and the next guy's lane. Like, the image that you should have is like, like once you get like your lead, just like you're invincible. Like, do literally anything that you want. Because once you have stats, there's nothing that they can do.
Yes.
They won't outplay. They can, but they won't. Don't assume that they will. Once you have the stats, just run at him. It's that easy.
Yeah.
Rift Herald, low value. Mid, there's 4 people.
High value.
High value. I'm just kidding. Rift Herald's actually pretty good.
It's not as high value anymore because there's no play.
Okay, what's the greediest play you can make here?
I run mid lane.
Uh-huh. Is it going to work?
Yes.
I agree. So go in. Oh, look, it didn't work. But guess what? That's okay. Because you played to what was in front of you. And what was in front of you was that Mundo was walking up.
Ouch.
Now, what's in front of you?
A Diana and a Mundo, who are both down. Lots of stuff.
Yeah.
Gold, XP, whatever. So I could use Herald and dive.
Yeah. Do you like that play?
Yeah, somewhat.
What keeps you from it? What assumptions are you making?
So I actually want to run bot lane and just take these 2 turrets in bot lane.
Mm-hmm.
So my thing is, okay, I ult bot lane, we dive bot lane because we have a Pyke and a Kled and they are going to die. And we use Herald, or we use Herald and then we dive, whatever. We have a Tristana and we have a turret. We have a Herald.
Yeah.
And there's 2 people bot lane.
Mm-hmm. There's 2 people mid, but they're tanky. The 2 people in bottom lane are
Yeah.
squishy. Play to what's in front of you.
Yeah,
It's better.
yeah, that's the plan.
It's like literally you look at it and it looks better, right? So this is where we go.
Yeah.
So I love this.
Now, what I don't agree with is, hey, I get collapsed on, which is pretty.
Uh-huh. Who cares?
And I die. Oh no, wait, I don't. Yeah, I do, but I live for a pretty long time, and they all overextend for me.
I see. And you get the turret in bottom, and you get to collapse on into that in mid too. So like obviously this is bad, right? It can be playing to what's in front of you can sometimes not work out. But I want to talk about this for a second, right? What percentage of games do you think like this results in like them showing up?
Pretty few actually.
Yeah, right? So even though so this is the trap, okay? This is the trap that you have to resist. You look at this
Yes.
and you say, "Okay, this was a bad play because it didn't work." And I can form a chain of logic that, can cause me to expect them to show up here. Right?
Yeah.
But actually, it's the right play because this is silver. Most of the time, even though they have enough information to show up, they won't collect it and they won't show up. So you get punished for making a bad play here, and the temptation is to say, okay, I'm not going to make bad plays anymore because they can punish me for them. But you actually have to keep making them.
Yes, I understand. They have vision here in this bush. I think that's why they collapsed on me. And I tried to kill Kha'Zix here because I think I can kill him, but I can't.
I mean, they also just see you press Herald through Fog of War. That's another one.
Oh yeah, fair. Yeah, but it's silver.
Yeah. It's silver, but like, let's be real. It makes a noise, okay? Most people can see what's in front of them and make a noise. They're not assuming that you're bottom. They know that you're bottom because you made a noise, right?
Does it make noise?
Like, you don't walk into mid and then assume that they don't know that you're in mid. Like,
no, I understand.
Yeah. You don't assume that they're going to make any predictions. You do assume that they can see what they can see. Anyway, so you get the shutdown. You're still wildly far ahead. And I love this. Yeah. Could there be many people behind her? Totally. Are there? No. Is that safe? Absolutely not. Is it the correct play? Absolutely.
And we get Drake now.
Yep.
It's free.
It's free. Then you walk into mid. You look for it. You're like, he's Mundo. He sees a pike in a lane. He's going to push. Now, this is exactly the kind of assumption that I like. Right? You are playing around him doing what makes sense for what's on his screen. Right? And that's the like level that you can expect from these sorts of players. Right? So really, although I meme a lot, right? It's not actually about no expectations, and it's not actually about like making like the dumbest play you can think of, right? It's about being realistic about what kind of players these are, right? And they're not bots, right? They're not literally running it down. But neither are they platinum players,
Yeah.
They're not looking at their minimap all the time, but they are pretty consistently looking at what's on the screen and making, semi-rational decisions about what they see.
Yeah.
And it's fine. It's not actually fine.
What is fine?
Her. Now it's not fine. Click W.
No.
Alright. What should you do here?
Stay, dive, mid lane, I think. Or...
Let me hit you with a big brain play. Alt towards red. And if there's nobody there, guess where you go? You just go top and you just take a tower. Okay. How do you like that one, Coach? By the way. Holy crap.
Yeah, that's some LS level memes.
Hyphy. No,
mean, we
staying
get
mid is
to
totally
like-
fine too. I don't hate this either.
And he dies, I think.
He dies. Pepe laugh. Okay.
I love it.
All right. Now, like, you feel this energy, okay?
Yeah,
This is the
yeah,
energy
yeah.
that you're looking to bring into your solo queue games, okay? Where you're just like laughing, like having fun, like it's like loose, right? Like to play solo queue effectively in this elo, you can't get too caught up on details. If
It's
you get
a
caught up on
fun
details, if you
reason.
start looking at if you start actually like looking at what's happening and trying to process it, you're just gonna like have a meltdown. You're just gonna be sad about where you are. So just don't be sad. Just come into it, laugh about it. When somebody makes a mistake, including you, it's fine. It doesn't matter. It's silver. You're gonna win the game anyway, right?
Yeah.
Like, so just like play loose, go woof, enjoy it. Play to what's on the screen.
Yes.
Okay.
I could maybe even win this.
Yeah.
But I have 1750
Do you
gold. and
do
I'm
you
not
have
here.
do you have good enough internet to like screen share while you're playing?
I have inconsistent internet, but I do have
Ah, right.
solid internet.
Right. So it's solid while you're there. So do you want, I'm offering, do you want to try doing a like live game where I try to keep you in the right mindset for a good portion of the game?
I would be down to try.
Okay. Now I will mention that we've already gone for 2 hours. So are we still good to go on for longer than that?
Nah, I think we've covered most of the woofs that have to be addressed today.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
We
that makes sense.
Yeah, I think like a real time thing can happen.
Yeah, let's do that next time.
Pretty like yeah, can happen next time. Then we finish off like what? Okay.
Okay.
What is like what am I doing wrong that I should be doing?
Yeah.
What am I doing right that I should be doing wrong?
Yeah. I like that. That's there you go. Now you're getting into it. What are you doing right that you should be wrong? You're predicting too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to be really interested to see what this does for you this week. Because like I say, this is something that I myself am kind of like currently in the process of discovering. This is like bleeding edge tech, right? But it's certainly something. It's certainly something. Okay, man. Well, this was fun, and I'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Okay.
See ya.
Cool. Peace.